Key Democratic fundraisers and celebrities in Hollywood appear to be throwing support behind Kamala Harris's U.S. presidential campaign, greeting President Biden's exit from the race with a sigh of relief. Often described as an ATM for Democrats, the world's film and TV capital in Los Angeles has long been an important source of the party's campaign funds. On Monday, rapper Cardi B, actors Jamie Lee Curtis and Viola Davis, and TV producer Shonda Rhimes threw their support behind the U.S. vice president. A spokesperson for Harris's campaign said on Monday it had raked in $81 million in the first 24 hours, the most for a single day in the 2024 campaign for either party. However, celebrities and fundraisers had stopped donating money to the Democrats since Biden's disastrous debate in June. Some, such as George Clooney and others, publicly said the president should end his campaign, with Clooney writing a frank op-ed for the New York Times that said Biden had to go, weeks after he had hosted a hugely successful fundraiser for the president. On Monday, though, producer for Lost, Damon Lindelof, said he ended calls on fellow donors to withhold their money, a so-called dembargo, after Biden's withdrawal. On social media, Lindelof said he felt profound relief and genuine excitement for the election ahead, though he did not back a specific candidate. Disney heiress Abigail Disney, who had called on Biden to drop out, said she was resuming her donations to Democrats and that she thought Harris would be an excellent candidate.
In her debut campaign speech on Monday, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris vowed to call on her experience as a courtroom prosecutor in dealing with Republican nominee Donald Trump.
I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
Trump is due to be sentenced in September for falsifying business records to hide hush money payments to a porn star. He also faces criminal charges related to his efforts to overturn President Joe Biden's 2020 election victory. The speech to campaign workers in Delaware came just 28 hours after Biden stepped aside amid questions about his age and health and endorsed Harris.
I love you, Joe.
The former California Attorney General and U.S. Senator also said that building up the middle class would be at the center of her presidency.
Together we fight to build a nation where every person has affordable health care, where every worker is paid fairly, and where every senior can retire with dignity. All of this is to say, building up the middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency.
Harris also highlighted other policy priorities, including gun control and reproductive rights.
If Trump gets the chance, he will sign a national abortion ban to outlaw abortion in every single state, but we are not going to let that happen.
The Trump campaign slammed Harris after the speech, calling her, quote, just as incompetent as Joe Biden and even more liberal. Harris went to work consolidating Democratic support for her presidential bid minutes after receiving Biden's backing on Sunday. According to multiple sources late on Monday, Harris has secured support from a majority of delegates to the Democratic National Convention. That likely ensures she will become the party's nominee for president next month. Harris's campaign also said it had raised $81 million in the 24 hours following Biden's exit, the most for a single day in the 2024 campaign for either party. Harris will travel on Tuesday to Milwaukee, the largest city in the battleground state of Wisconsin. The city last week hosted a Republican National Convention that offered a stark display of Trump's dominance over his party.
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris made her first public remarks on Monday after President Joe Biden announced he'd dropped out of the race for the White House and endorsed her as the Democratic nominee.
Joe Biden's legacy of accomplishment over the past 3 years is unmatched in modern history.
And she used the platform to offer praise for the man who stepped aside so she could step up.
In one term, he has already surpassed the legacy of most presidents who have served 2 terms in office.
Harris did not directly address her new status as the leading Democratic candidate for president, but virtually all the prominent Democrats who had been seen as potential challengers to Harris have lined up behind her. They include Governors Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, Gavin Newsom of California, and Andy Beshear of Kentucky. On Monday, Harris also won the support of influential former Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who played a leading role in persuading Biden to end his campaign. Campaign officials and allies have already made hundreds of calls on Harris's behalf, urging delegates at next month's Democratic Party convention to join in nominating her for president in the November 5th election against Republican Donald Trump.
Our president, Joe Biden, wanted to be here today. He is feeling much better and recovering fast.
She said Biden, who tested positive for COVID-19 last week, was feeling better. And some Democrats, too, may be feeling better.
We are witnessing a full-on attack on hard-fought, hard-won freedoms.
Harris, who is black and Asian American, would fashion an entirely new dynamic with 78-year-old Trump. Dr. Mina Bose is the executive dean for public policy and public service programs at Hofstra University.
Vice President Harris's relative youth, someone who's hasn't turned 60, right, compared to former President Trump, does that bring this energy, right? And then again, of course, some very serious policy differences in the economy, foreign policy, social issues such as abortion. I mean, the list goes on, right? These are very different parties, political parties, very different party agendas. Can a new messenger for the Democrats convey that message more effectively than President Biden? That's something we'll just have to see.
Harris is a former California Attorney General and a former U.S. Senator. She has been outspoken on abortion rights, an issue that resonates with younger voters and more liberal Democrats. Proponents argue she would energize these voters, consolidate black support, and bring sharp debating skills to prosecute the political case against the former president, who was convicted earlier this month on 34 criminal counts after being found guilty of trying to hide hush money payments to a porn star. But some Democrats were concerned about a Harris candidacy, in part because of the weight of a long history of racial and gender discrimination in the United States, which has not elected a woman president in its nearly 250
There were sufficient resources
What did you just
that
say?
were given to
Did you just say there were
former
sufficient
presidents.
resources? President Trump
Event
got
that
shot.
day.
In a contentious House Oversight Committee hearing Monday, U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle admitted that she and her agency failed when a would-be assassin wounded Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump at a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania.
I take full responsibility for any security lapse of our agency.
But she signaled that she had no intention of resigning despite bipartisan calls to do so.
You think you are the best person in the country to head the Secret Service?
I think that I am the best person to lead the Secret Service at this time.
Cheatle declined to answer specific questions about the day's security plan, saying the matter was being investigated, frustrating both Republicans and Democrats.
I can tell you on our mission assurance, internal investigation, we are targeting to have that completed within 60 days.
So the notion of a report coming out in 60 days when the threat environment is so high in the United States, irrespective of party, is not acceptable.
Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th, yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today.
The shooting on July 13th wounded Trump in the ear, killed one rally attendee, and injured another. The suspected shooter, 20-year-old nursing home aide Thomas Crooks, was killed by law enforcement. It is still not clear what his motive was for the shooting.
Google parent Alphabet had plans for its biggest ever acquisition, but it looks like the deal is off. Israeli cybersecurity firm Wiz appears to have cancelled a $23 billion takeover. That's according to an internal memo seen by Reuters. Wiz chief Asaf Rappaport says in the note that the firm will focus on an initial public offering instead. He says it is tough to walk away from a humbling offer, but is confident the firm can hit revenue goals without it. Neither company has ever officially confirmed talks over a deal, and neither commented on the latest report. If confirmed, it would be a blow for Google, which has been investing heavily in its cloud computing infrastructure. It would also be the second failed acquisition for Alphabet in recent times. It reportedly walked away from a deal to buy online marketing software company HubSpot. The $23 billion cited for Wiz could have been almost double the value put on the firm in a fundraising round in May.
The death toll from 2 landslides in southern Ethiopia has risen sharply to over 150. That's according to the head of the National Disaster Response Agency in Gofar Zone, who said on Tuesday the number could increase further. Marcos Milese said the search is ongoing and that there were bodies yet to be recovered. Officials had reported on Monday that 50 people had died. That's after heavy rain overnight caused a first landslide and then a second buried people who had gathered to help. Women, children, and local police were reported to be among the dead.
Historically high cocoa prices haven't stopped consumers eating up Lindt chocolate. The Swiss firm reported a 7% jump in half-year organic sales Tuesday. The maker of chocolate bunnies said sales hit $2.43 billion for the first 6 months, just above analyst expectations. Revenue grew as prices rose in the mid-single-digit percentage range, leaving consumers to pay more for their treats. And Lindt said it would need to hike prices further. Cocoa costs have more than doubled this year due to limited crop supply and are now higher than many metals. Looking ahead, the chocolate maker confirmed its full-year outlook for organic sales growth at up to 8%. The maker of Lindor chocolate balls said it would launch a new share buyback program of close to $562 million from early August.
The chaos isn't over for U.S. air travelers. Delta chief Ed Bastian says the airline faces a couple more days of delays and cancellations. It's all a result of the global IT outage caused by a faulty software update from cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike. That sparked worldwide problems for firms that use its software on Microsoft systems. Delta is among the worst affected airlines. It's canceled over 4,000 flights since Friday. On Monday alone, it dropped over 800 flights, or around a fifth of the total that day. That's according to data from plane tracking app FlightAware. Travelers in Atlanta, Delta's home base, were predictably unhappy.
Look around, there's bags everywhere, and there's still families just laying on the ground since Friday. People have been here since Friday. Yeah. So this is ridiculous.
Bastian says Delta is working around the clock to solve the problem. He said he hoped things would be much better by Wednesday. Around 60% of critical applications at the firm are Windows-based. Because CrowdStrike's software operates deep in the Windows system, fixing computers affected by the problem has meant each one had to be manually repaired and rebooted. Delta has had particular trouble with its crew tracking system, which is meant to ensure pilots and others are in the right place at the right time.
Main indexes closed higher on Monday as investors returned to mega-cap growth stocks, helping both the S&P 500 and NASDAQ recover from their worst weekly performance since April. The Dow added 0.3%, the S&P 500 climbed more than 1%, and the NASDAQ rose more than 1.5%. Shares of Nvidia finished up after Reuters reported the chipmaker was working on a version of its new flagship AI chips for the Chinese market that would be compliant with current U.S. export controls. Also influencing markets was U.S. President Joe Biden's decision to end his re-election campaign, according to Bonrian Capital Management founder and CEO Shana Orzik-Sissel.
As far as the markets go today, I think that it's broadly reacting to the news over the weekend of President Biden stepping aside and endorsing Vice President Harris as the nominee for the Democrats in the presidential election. This is a big deal because markets like certainty. They don't like uncertainty. And there was a lot of uncertainty surrounding him as the nominee. So I think broadly speaking, you're seeing a reaction to that news and market moves today.
Sissel added that she still thinks the market expects Trump to win in November. Stocks on the move included cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike, which plunged about 13.5%. after a software update from the company sparked Friday's global tech outage. Shares fell 11% on Friday. And Verizon Communications fell 6% after a second quarter revenue miss.
Ryanair reported a huge fall in after-tax earnings on Monday. The budget airline said profit was down 46% for the April to June quarter from the previous year at $392 million. It was well below analyst forecasts of around $586 million. CEO Michael O'Leary said average fares per passenger fell 15% in the quarter from a year earlier. He added the airline was forced to engage in more price stimulation than expected. And he further warned fares for its key summer months would be lower than last year. That's not great news for investors, as Ryanair usually makes most of its profit during the July to September quarter. O'Leary said it was too early to forecast profit for the full financial year, which ends on March 31st. Ryanair said it thought the weakness in fares was due to consumers being more frugal and a bit more cautious. Investors were alarmed by Monday's update, and shares dropped around 12% in early trade. The Irish airline has seen its shares tumble over recent months, in large part due to fare weakness.
Stellantis is ready to fight for its place in Europe's electric vehicle market against strong competition from Chinese automakers, says its CEO, Carlos Tavares.
All the European countries are inviting the Chinese manufacturers to come to Europe. This is the fact. We are going to demonstrate to them that we have the right technology. We are going to demonstrate to them that we are a very fierce competitor.
Tavares made the comments as the group showed off its new EV production line in Serbia.
We at Stellantis, we are ready for the fight.
Serbia is pushing to become a key European supplier of sustainable raw materials, batteries, and electric vehicles. It signed a $206 million deal with Stellantis in 2022 for the production of an electric vehicle at its Kragujevac manufacturing plant, which is seen as a generator of growth for the entire region. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić said the plant could raise the country's GDP by 0.5% next year alone. And the country has reinstated a license for mining company Rio Tinto to develop Europe's biggest lithium mine, a potential boost to the continent's EV industry. Serbia is eyeing an annual lithium output equal to about 17% of the European market, enough for about 1.1 million electric vehicles.
Electric aircraft maker Eve has showcased its first full-scale flying taxi prototype as the company aims to obtain certification to enter service in 2026. The prototype of its electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft was rolled out at an event with investors and clients at the Brazilian plane maker's plant in early July. Eve CEO Johan Bordes told Reuters the prototype is expected to fly by the end of this year or the start of 2025. Bordes said this version is completely remote, so the company can test aerodynamics and the transition from vertical to horizontal flight. The final vehicle will seat 4 passengers and a pilot and is expected to ferry travelers on short city trips to beat traffic. It's one of a bevy of startups worldwide developing battery-powered aircraft for the purpose. Eve applied for certification to Brazil's civil aviation regulator in 2022 and debuted on the New York Stock Exchange the same year, raising nearly $400 million. It also secured a $92 million loan from a Brazilian state development bank and recently announced a fresh round of fundraising, totaling $94 million. Bordes said the company is currently financed to develop the product until 2027, but says some challenges still exist. Power grids in cities around the world are not ready for so-called flying cars, from the electricity supply to ports for vertical takeoff and landing. Eve has amassed nearly 3,000 potential orders ahead of production, which it hopes to eventually convert into firm orders. Interested clients include U.S. carrier United, charter firm Global Crossing, and aircraft lessor Azora.
The Farnborough Air Show kicked off Monday with the industry facing a host of challenges. Supply chain disruptions, aircraft delays, and plans to reduce emissions have all presented problems for the aviation sector. The annual show in the south of England is a major industry event. This year's show even drew in UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Farnborough often sees orders for passenger jets from Boeing and Airbus. But many delegates said the show wasn't expected to produce a flurry of orders this year as Airbus struggles to reach output goals. While Boeing has also taken a low-key posture due to a safety crisis caused by a mid-air blowout in January. Delegates said some deals have already gotten over the line. Korean Air agreed to buy scores of Boeing planes and other major airlines are projected to do deals. Industry bosses will look for any further sign of weakness in air passenger demand after profit warnings from some airlines.